Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. I know I did. It's that time of the year. Just so much stuff going on. Christmas only like 2 weeks away. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on. And yesterday we got the official college football playoff bracket, in which we learned that Notre Dame will host Indiana in the college football playoff. Indiana going on the road to South Bend for their first round matchup against Notre Dame Friday, December 20th. I'm so glad that this happened. I root for the show in everything, and this is hands down the best thing for the show. We get this interstate matchup. Notre Dame's probably laughing at the idea of playing Indiana in football. You know, Notre Dame very much views Indiana as like this little brother that still belongs at the kids' table in the world of football, while Indiana is like, nah, we're here. We're smoking cigarettes now. It's great. We're here. We're going to go to South Bend. We're going to win this game. That is, I think, the state of the Indiana fan base. And at this point in the year, there aren't any bad teams left except for maybe SMU and Clemson. Still not too sure about how good either one of them is. But anyway, Coach Cignetti both knows and understands that Notre Dame is a good football team. They are. And here's what Coach Cignetti had to say about playing Notre Dame after finding out yesterday that that's who they'd be playing in the first round.
Notre Dame, I'll be honest, saw them on tape against Purdue. We're getting ready for Purdue. Obviously, a very good football team. They've won 10 in a row. Coach Freeman's done a tremendous job with that football team. I've looked at their stats, haven't had a chance to really watch them today with all the media stuff going on. But, you know, I saw enough of them against Purdue to know that they're an excellent football team. And when you look at their scores, they haven't played in very many close games. So I'm sure they'll be quite the challenge. But we're looking forward to it. We're a good football team. I'm confident in our football team. I think that we will apply the lessons learned at Ohio State when we had to go on the road in a hostile environment against a good football team and apply those up at Notre Dame. And we've got to have a great week of prep.
Coach Cignetti right there talking about Indiana going on the road to South Bend to take on Notre Dame in that 7 versus 10 matchup. And this is interesting to say the least. When you line up Indiana and Notre Dame, I think people who've watched both teams play this year would very quickly be able to point out that Notre Dame is definitely more talented than Indiana. Riley Leonard is a more talented quarterback than Curtis Rourke. Okay, the offensive line at Notre Dame is always good. The secondary at Notre Dame is really good this year, better than Indiana's. But I would also argue that Notre Dame is more capable of not playing well. See their game against Northern Illinois earlier this year for proof. Meanwhile, you look at Indiana, and they're always very well prepared. They're always very well coached. Indiana hasn't laid an egg all year. Sure, they got crushed by 23 by Ohio State on the road, but that was because Ohio State's simply on another level than Indiana is in terms of talent from everyone, really, not named Georgia, Oregon, or Texas. Those are the 4 most talented, not best, talented teams in the country. Notre Dame is opened yesterday as a 7.5-point favorite at home. I haven't bet on it yet. I don't know if I will, but I would lean towards Indiana covering that at first glance. You know, I'm sure as these 2 weeks, you know, kind of string along, I'm sure my opinion will change multiple times. But at first glance, where I landed on it was, yeah, I like Indiana to cover that simply because I think Curt Cignetti is a better coach than Marcus Freeman. The quick turnaround at Indiana is more than proof of that. And I think that since there's an extended period of time to prep, that favors Indiana. 2 weeks worth. Now, look, I'm not saying that Marcus Freeman's a bad head coach, but let's be honest. He's laid some eggs during his time at Notre Dame. 4 years. This year, you have the Northern Illinois game, a game that they shouldn't have lost ever. In 2022, he lost to Marshall and Stanford, who finished 3-9 that year. They didn't have any bad losses last year, but they lost to teams like Louisville, who was okay in the ACC, and they lost to Clemson, who had a down year last year. Teams that are, sure, fine, solid, average, but teams that Notre Dame should have beaten. Notre Dame, under Marcus Freeman, is clearly capable of showing up to games not prepared and to not play well. The thing, though, with Notre Dame, as I said earlier, is they are more talented than Indiana. Notre Dame has more players on their roster that are going to play on Sundays than Indiana does. That's why they're favored. And that's why no one is going to give Indiana a chance to win this game. Indiana is seen as this fraudulent team that hasn't beaten anybody good all year, which is true, but they've blown everybody out. So Indiana is clearly a good team, and they're very well coached, and they've got a lot of experience. They've got a lot of older players, and Marcus Freeman understands that. Here's what he had to say about Indiana yesterday after finding out that that's who Notre Dame would play in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, coach has done a wonderful job to take this program to win 11 games in the Big Ten and in a Big Ten season, and to have this team ready to make a run in the playoffs. I mean, it's a credit to the coach. I didn't know much about him. I took a minute and Googled him and looked at some of the things he's done in the past at his other places. I mean, he's won everywhere he's been, so he's done a great job. And we expect a great opponent. I've just briefly started looking at them. They're a talented team that really takes care of the football, right? They play complementary football. Their defense is a pressure attacking defense that really makes you earn everything you got and you get. And the offense has done a good job of taking care of the football, being consistent at what they do, and done some really good things in the red zone. So that's just my initial look at them. Obviously, we have a few days to really take a deep dive and figure out a plan of attack as we get ready for a Friday game.
Marcus Freeman right there talking about Indiana. Look, I'll be honest. It's very nice to know that Marcus Freeman Googled Indiana and Kurt Cignetti and knows that this team is good. Here's the thing with Indiana. They're not that hard to figure out. They're going to run the football. They're going to throw fades, and they're not going to turn the ball over. That is their offense. And then on defense, they're just going to be where they're supposed to be at all times. They are incredibly well coached. They are a team that isn't going to beat themselves. Okay, the one game that they did, it was against Ohio State. Okay, and they got blown out. All right. Indiana's a team that isn't going to make a lot of mistakes, so they're going to have a chance to win every single game that they play. Okay? Plus, they've got some good players. They do. This is going to be a great game. There's a part of me, however, that feels like this game doesn't matter because I don't think either one of these teams are good enough to beat Georgia. But from a path perspective, right, because this college football playoff bracket, the way it's set up is so dumb that some of the paths are incredibly lopsided. Like if you're Indiana, you don't want to be the 10 seed, or at least you didn't. You want to be the 11 seed because being on that 11 line is way easier than being on that 10 line. If you're Notre Dame, you would have been far better off having been the 6 seed, right? Because if you're the 6 seed, you play SMU and then you play Boise State. That sounds pretty nice to me. It sounds way better than having to play Indiana and then Georgia. If you're Indiana, if you're the 11th seed, you're playing Penn State. Look, I think Penn State and Notre Dame are both a little overrated, to say the least. But Notre Dame's better than Penn State. Okay? So if you're Indiana, you'd rather be the 11th seed, play Penn State, and then go play Boise State. That sounds way better than having to play Notre Dame and then Georgia. Okay, having Georgia in the wait for both of these teams with 3 weeks off to figure out whatever's wrong with Carson Beck, even though Georgia's offense I thought looked better with the backup quarterback than it did Carson Beck, but that's beside the point. That's not something that I personally would want to look forward to. And this college football playoff bracket is it's so dumb. It just is. It's ridiculous. Okay, the way the bracket shook out as a whole is incredibly frustrating. I loathe the way that this works. Arizona State finished the year as the 12th ranked team in the country. That is where the College Football Playoff Committee ranked them. But they're the 4 seed. In what world does that make sense? I'll tell you, not a one. Boise State finished the year as the 9th ranked team in the country, and they get a bye as a 3 seed. That doesn't make any sort of sense. The top 4 ranked teams should get the 4 byes, because then the paths make sense. Oregon is the number 1 seed. They went undefeated. They have the best resume in the country, and not just because they won more games than everybody else, but because of who they've beaten. Penn State, Ohio State, Boise State. They've beaten a quarter of the field that made the college football playoff. Okay? They are hands down the most impressive team in the country. But if I'm Oregon, I'm super upset today, and they should be. Oregon beat Penn State, but because of how the seeding shook out, Penn State has an easier path to the semifinal than Oregon does. That doesn't make any sense. If I'm Oregon, I'd be so upset. And I would, if I was Dan Lanning, I hate when coaches do this, but if I'm Dan Lanning, I would understand it. I would have taken yesterday, and I just would have talked about how the seeding in this works, because it clearly needs to change. There's not a world where Penn State, who lost to Oregon in the Big Ten title game, there's not a world where they should have an easier path to the playoff or to the semifinals than Oregon. Penn State is going to play SMU, the 10th ranked team in the country, according to the College Football Playoff Committee. They're going to play SMU in the first round at home. And then they're going to play the 9th ranked team, Boise State, in the second round. And then in the semis, they'll probably play Georgia. Oregon, on the other hand, gets a bye week, which is nice. Then they either play 6th ranked Ohio State or 7th ranked Tennessee. Why? They shouldn't be playing a higher ranked team than Penn State in the second round as the 1 seed. Okay. And then they have to play 3rd ranked Texas. Look, I don't think that this is very complicated. I don't at all. The 1 seed should have the easiest path, and I think everyone would agree with that. Okay, Oregon, however, has one of the harder paths, and this needs to be fixed next year. Okay, and so the way that I see it, the College Football Playoff Committee, the people who put together the rules for this, they have one of 2 options. Option number 1, they can either reseed the teams after the first round. Okay, which would be fine with me, right? Let's reseed them. Let's make sure that the 1 seed has the easiest path the whole way through, because that's the way that it should be. I love that the NFL does that. Okay, that is what should happen. They should reseed after every single round. Or they could do the thing that would get people super riled up. Okay? I mean, if they were just we're going to rank the 4 best teams and we're going to give them the byes. And then everyone would have been really upset, because this year that would have meant that Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State got the 4 byes. And everyone would be like, oh, so this is just a Big Ten SEC invitational? That's what everyone would have said, and they would have been wrong, because those are, except for Penn State, probably the 4 best teams in the country. Right? Look, the whole if you win your conference thing, you get an automatic bye is dumb. It just is. Now, if you want to tell me, hey, if you win your conference, right, if you win a Power 4 conference, then you get an automatic bid. That makes sense. Let's do that. Okay? But the top 4 conference champions getting bye weeks doesn't make any sense, because it gives you a lopsided bracket, and we're seeing that happen right now. And my whole thing is championship games are supposed to have the 2 best teams. And with how lopsided this bracket is, I don't know if we're going to get that or not. Okay? The other thing is you're supposed to have the 12 best teams in the playoff. Okay, that is the whole point. The point of a playoff and the point of ranking these teams is to put the 12 best teams in, and the College Football Playoff Committee failed to do that yesterday. I'm going to tell you where they failed. I'm also going to play a little bit of audio from Curt Cignetti that, I'll be honest, upset me a little bit. All that is coming your way here in 4 minutes.
Thanks to Total Wine, you saved more on all the gifts for the ones you adore. Wine, spirits, beers, all nestled on shelves.
Curbside pickup and delivery available, and the lowest prices for over 30 years only at Total Wine & More.
Drink responsibly. B21.
It's your last chance to snag Dell Technologies' lowest prices of the year before the holidays. The future is on sale today with limited time deals on select PCs like the XPS 16 that accelerate AI with Intel Core Ultra processors. This is their biggest sale of the year and the best time to upgrade, but it's only here for a limited time. Shop now at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
Thanks to Total Wine, you saved more on all the gifts for the ones you adore. Wine, spirits, beers, all nestled on shelves.
Curbside pickup and delivery available, and the lowest prices for over 30 years only at Total Wine & More.
Drink responsibly. B21.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week, or you had a nice weekend. Hopefully your week's off to a good start. Now, let's start with what the College Football Playoff Committee got wrong. SMU should not have gotten in over Alabama. I'm sorry. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. I think, quite frankly, it's insane that SMU got in over Alabama. Look, I understand why they didn't. Losing to Vanderbilt and losing to Oklahoma needs to matter, okay? Totally get it. Totally understand it. But so does beating, second-ranked Georgia. So does beating, 14th-ranked South Carolina. Beating Missouri and LSU should also matter. All four of those wins would be SMU's best win. That should also matter. The fact that SMU hasn't beaten a ranked team all year should matter. SMU went 11-2 on the year. Their 2 losses. They lost to 16th ranked Clemson by 3, and they lost to 17th ranked BYU by 3. Sounds like they are very competitive with the 16th and 17th ranked teams in the country. So they're probably something like the 18th best team in college football. And I thought, at least, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that the whole goal of the college football playoff rankings was to rank the 12 best teams. And SMU is clearly not that. The idea also that removing SMU from the college football playoff after losing to Clemson would have resulted in the ACC removing their conference title game is wrong. It's wrong for 2 reasons. First and foremost, the conference title game gave them an opportunity to get not 1 but 2 teams in, and that would have been true whether SMU won or lost, right? And or if they'd been put in or not, the opportunity to get 2 in still would have remained, right? Whereas if you get rid of that conference championship game as a whole, then you're definitely only getting 1. The other thing is it's an extra game for them to sell, and ultimately college football is all about money. And when you have that extra game to sell, when you're able to present the ACC conference championship game presented by Progressive or whatever it is, they wouldn't have gotten rid of it. They wouldn't have. Okay. Also, when just another thing, when it comes to Alabama over SMU, when you're putting teams in the college football playoff, there should be a required question asked about every single at-large bid, every single one. Can you picture them winning the whole thing? Based off of what they've done, is there a world where you can see them winning the whole thing? When you ask that question about SMU, the answer is no. Because the 2 good teams that they played this year, who aren't even that great, they're above average, the 16th and 17th ranked teams in the country. Guess what? They lost those games. Meanwhile, when you ask that question about Alabama, the answer is yes. Because they beat Georgia, the 2nd best team in the country. And they beat South Carolina. That's 2 of the 15 best teams in college football. Strength of schedule and great wins should outweigh winning the weakest of the Power 4 conferences than losing to 16th ranked Clemson in the ACC title game. Look, there's no good option here. Okay, there's flaws with both teams, no doubt, which is why putting 12 teams in the playoff never made any sort of sense anyway. But the committee should have opted for the team that had proven on multiple occasions that they can beat good teams over an SMU team that had 2 chances to prove the exact same thing, that they are capable of beating good teams, but couldn't win either one of those games. Okay, the fact that SMU got in, I think is ridiculous because these are supposed to be rankings, not standings. I thought that what Nick Saban said yesterday about how in college football, not all wins are the same is incredibly true. Alabama's wins over teams like South Carolina and Georgia proves that they are capable of competing at that level. SMU's losses to BYU and Clemson proves that they are not capable of competing at that level. What SMU's schedule has proven is that they can beat teams that are 8-4. Congratulations. Guess what? There aren't any 8-4 teams in the college football playoff. Alabama has proven that, yes, they are capable of laying an egg and losing to teams like Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. But, Notre Dame proved that they were capable of laying an egg by losing to Northern Illinois. And no one knocked them for that, except for me. Alabama's also proven that they're capable of beating anybody. And I would rather have a team in, like Alabama, that is capable of beating anybody than a team like SMU that is clearly incapable of beating a ranked team, as they have proven throughout their season. Now, as much as, SMU making the playoff over Alabama bothers me, there's something else that bothers me even more. And it's coaches complaining about where their team is ranked in the college football playoff. Look, this is a pro Kurt Cignetti show. Love Kurt Cignetti. He's done a great job at Indiana. I like a lot of what he does, but what he did Saturday night before the Big Ten championship game, I didn't like. Here's this soundbite of Kurt Cignetti complaining.
Ninth in the CFP. Yeah, here's my question, right? There's 6 one-loss teams in the country, right? Okay. We lost to the second-ranked team on the road. Penn State lost to the 4th-ranked team at home. Texas lost to the 5th-ranked team at home. Boise lost to the 7th-ranked team. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. And SMU lost to an unranked team at the time they played. So how are we not right now seeded for a home game? That's what I want to know. We got the largest margin of victory in the country. Okay, take out the FCS and the G5, right? P4 only. We're outscoring people 40-17, second in the country. So because our name is Indiana and not Michigan,
pretty much,
we're ninth.
That's one of those things.
That was Coach Cignetti right there talking about what, not really talking, more so complaining about the fact that they weren't seeded. This is before the rankings came out. He said all this on Saturday night, but it was just him complaining about not hosting a home game. Why? Like, we only have one loss. Why? Like, why aren't we hosting a home game? Our one loss came on the road at Ohio State. Everyone else lost at home. All this nonsense. Here's the truth, Coach Cignetti. Let me say this beforehand. I like Cignetti. I like this team. I like that Indiana is good at college football because it means that I can spend 30 minutes on a Monday talking about it on my show. It's great. It's awesome. I love it. But here's the thing, Coach Cignetti. Here's the thing, Indiana fans. The reason why you are not hosting a home college football playoff game is because you haven't beaten anybody good. And everyone ranked in front of you has beaten someone better than your best win, 7-5 Michigan. Tennessee, who's not hosting a home game this year, by the way, they're going to Columbus. Tennessee beat Alabama. That is much more impressive than Indiana's win over Michigan. Ohio State beat Penn State on the road in Happy Valley. They also beat Indiana. Those 2 wins, way more impressive than Indiana's two best wins over, I don't know, Michigan and Washington. Congratulations. Notre Dame, a team that I've been very hard on this year. Notre Dame beat Texas A&M on the road. Notre Dame beat Navy and Army. All 3 of those wins better than Indiana's best win over Michigan. Penn State, at least they beat Illinois. Okay, and their schedule was tougher than Indiana's. So you say, Jonathan, how do you know that? I know that because that was the tiebreaker that put them into the Big Ten championship game. Texas beat Texas A&M on the road. That is a better win than Indiana's win over Michigan. Okay, every team ranked in front of Indiana that is hosting a home college football playoff game have better wins. They do. Okay? And you look at Indiana, and it's like, I'm sorry that your schedule shook out this way. But because you don't have a win over Illinois, because you don't have a win over Louisville, who you could have played in the non-conference, but you canceled on, because you don't have a win like that, your resume doesn't compare to these other teams. And therefore, you get to go on the road and play Notre Dame in the first round. Congratulations. Okay, if you wanted a home game, then either don't cancel that game against Louisville and play Western Illinois instead, or go beat Ohio State on the road. Or, you know what, even better, don't get blown out by Ohio State on the road. Like maybe lose on like a last-second field goal, because apparently the College Football Playoff Committee loves it when you lose on a last-second field goal. Just ask SMU. Okay? Like, congratulations. You went 11-1. That's awesome. You're clearly a good team. But when you're weighing, as he said, 7 teams that have only lost 1 game, there has to be some sort of tiebreaker. And thankfully, the College Football Playoff Committee looked at teams like, who have you beaten? That to me should be the most important question. Okay? Like it should be, because I don't think that college football teams come out flat when they're playing against, lesser, or when they're playing college football playoff games. So there you go, Coach Cignetti. That is why you're playing on the road and you're not hosting a home college football playoff game. Now, I was having a really good weekend, Friday night, got home, hung out with my wife, just the best human being on the planet. And then, Saturday rolls around and I'm hanging out, watching college football, ended up going to doing some Christmas stuff with my wife and her friends. And it was good. I had a really good weekend, watched a ton of football, did all that stuff. But there was this brief moment during my weekend where I was sitting on my couch, just having a ball, having a great time. And then, I'm scrolling through Twitter as one does, and I see this announcement, this breaking news that Purdue hired Barry Odom as their new head football coach. And for the first time in my life, I became jealous of Purdue. When I saw that they hired Barry Odom, I was upset. No way around it. Because Barry Odom is a good football coach. Barry Odom was the defensive coordinator at Arkansas for 2 years, maybe 3. I don't fully remember. Before he took the head coaching job at UNLV. And I was hoping this year that Arkansas would fire their current head coach, who was happy to make the Liberty Bowl. Jeez. And I was hoping, let's fire him and let's go hire Barry Odom, a guy who had been in Fayetteville, a guy who had helped Arkansas win games in Fayetteville, a guy who understood the standard in Fayetteville. Let's go hire that guy. But then Arkansas was like, what we're going to do? We're going to allow Sam Pittman to coach one more year. And Purdue was like, thank you, Arkansas, so much for doing that. Let's go call up Barry Odom and let's bring him to West Lafayette. That way we can win some football games. And it's a great hire by Purdue. Barry Odom is going to inject toughness and just this new level of expectancy. Look, is Purdue going to win a national championship under Barry Odom? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know enough about Purdue's football resources and how much NIL they have. But what I do know is that Barry Odom is a very good coach who is going to win games at Purdue simply because he is a good coach. I really like him. I'm going to get more into Barry Odom and what he's going to bring to Purdue when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. I did. Got to hang out with my wife and her friends. It was a good time. Had a blast. Purdue hired Barry Odom as their new head football coach over the weekend. And as I said before break, I was incredibly jealous when I heard the news because Barry Odom is an outstanding football coach. Okay, he is. He is going to win games at Purdue. He is. This is a good hire. If he's bringing along his offensive coordinator, Marion, it's a great hire. They run this weird go-go, two running back system offense that's a little funky, but it's physical and it's good. Like, I really hope that they bring him along. And when you look at the history of Barry Odom and where he's been, where he's coached, where he's won, he got screwed over at Missouri. He coached there for 4 years, right? Trying to rebuild the program. Won 8 games twice, which is solid. That will play at Purdue. Purdue fans, please correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't interacted too much with your football fan base or your football expectations. But if Barry Odom showed up and won 7 or 8 games every single year, I feel like you would be happy about that. Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Head over to Indy Sports Ticket over there at on YouTube and subscribe. Join the chat, and it'll be good. Like, look, like when you look at Barry Odom and you look at his time at UNLV, he's been there 2 years. His first year, he showed up and they won 9 games. That's pretty good. This year, he showed up and he won 10 games, had a chance at the college football playoff, but they couldn't get it done against Boise State. Prior to that, UNLV had 3 5+ win seasons since 2010. This guy can coach. He showed up at UNLV and he turned it around. And what I think is one of the more impressive things about Barry Odom and what he did at UNLV is the whole NIL thing happened earlier this year, right? Where the starting quarterback was like, you guys said you'd pay me this much money and then you didn't. So I'm going to take my red shirt and I'm going to transfer, right? And it was all over the place, like all over the news, all that kind of stuff. But that didn't impact his team. It didn't. Okay. His team stayed together. That is a type of thing that can ruin your season. It is. And then when it comes to, Purdue and hiring this new good coach in Barry Odom, he's going to come in and he's going to turn things around quickly for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is he is a good coach. Okay, I think I've laid that out very well. He showed up at UNLV. He turned it around quickly. He showed up at Missouri. He was in the process of turning things around. Missouri wasn't patient enough, and so they fired him. Okay, here's the other thing. The schedule next year, way easier than it was this year. Okay, Indiana went 1-11 this year. Purdue went 1-11 this year. Purdue's going to play Ball State and Southern Illinois next year. That's 2 wins. That's already more wins than they had this year. Great. We're off to an awesome start in the Barry Odom football era at Purdue. Then they play at Notre Dame after having to host them this year. They're not winning that one. Sorry, not going to happen. Then they host Indiana, which will be easier than going on the road and playing Indiana. They host Illinois, who they went on the road to this year and lost 49-50 in overtime. And then they get Ohio State at home after playing them on the road this year. Look, that's probably another loss, but I'd rather play Ohio State at home than in Columbus where they got boat raced. They don't play Oregon or Penn State next year like they did this year. They also get to play Northwestern, who's not very good, Minnesota, who's like 6-6-ish in a good year, and then they play Rutgers. Like, those are 3 very winnable games. A tough game getting added that they didn't have to deal with this year is they're going on the road to Michigan, who's going to be talented again, who's going to be good, but they're playing a true freshman at quarterback. So who knows how good Michigan will be. I understand that true freshman quarterback's like the number 1 ranked player in the country, and they gave him like $10 million, which is absurd to give an 18-year-old who's never even played a college game before. who knows how good he will be. They'll also play USC at home, who isn't in a great spot as a program right now. And USC having to deal with the travel of going from LA all the way here to Indiana. Not great for USC. They also play in Washington, but Washington is still in the process of rebuilding. And I would think that it's easier to go west than it is to go east, because if you go east, then you have to wake up earlier, whereas if you go out west, you get to sleep in. So we'll see how that goes. The schedule for Purdue next year is so much easier than it was this year. So they should see a decent first year from Coach Odom. I think the ceiling, the highest number of wins that they hit next year is 8. I think it'll be closer to 6. They'll be like a 6-6, 5-7, maybe 7-5 team. But look, if he goes 6-6 in his first year, Barry Odom, and they make it to a bowl, after going 1-11 the year prior, I think everyone that is associated with Purdue will be, riding high on that Barry Odom train. So we'll see how it goes. I'm so excited for Purdue. I love Barry Odom. Otter Creek asked a really good question earlier. If you want to comment and be a part of the conversation, head over to YouTube, search for Indie Sports Ticket, subscribe, join the live stream. And, you can drop your thoughts in the comments. Otter Creek asking, if he's so outstanding, why did Odom have to settle for Purdue? If you look across the college football landscape, there are not very many teams that fired their coach. Like there aren't. Like Purdue fired theirs. There isn't another Big Ten team who fired their head coach. In the SEC, I don't think anyone fired their head coach. We thought Florida might fire Billy Napier. That didn't happen. When you look in the ACC, I don't know, would you rather go coach in the Big Ten or in the ACC? I think people would rather go coach in the Big Ten. So that's why Odom wound up there. And I think that what Purdue did was incredibly smart, just knowing that a lot of these probably more desirable locations weren't going to fire anybody this year. So you fire your guy now and you go grab a guy in Barry Odom who was looking to move up. So once again, great job by Purdue by, moving off Ryan Walters as soon as it was evident that he wasn't going to win very many games, and bringing in a guy in Barry Odom who actually has head coaching experience, as opposed to hiring the defensive coordinator from Illinois once again. Now, the Indianapolis Colts didn't play this week against anybody, right? They were off. They had a bye week. And so did the Broncos, which is really interesting. So we had this very intriguing week of no Colts football. They're on a bye, getting ready for Denver, and the Broncos are on a bye, getting ready for the Colts. And so I want to ask a very simple question. Who won the bye week between the Colts and the Broncos? Let's start with the Colts. What happened with the Colts this week that stirred things up? Nothing, really. Zach Hicks, who's hopefully going to come on tomorrow at 11, he posted some PFF numbers that rookie third-round pick Matt Gonsalves, an offensive tackle. He's apparently the 14th highest-rated pass blocker at offensive tackle in the NFL in the past 3 weeks. So that's cool. He's only given up 4 hurries and 96 pass blocking snaps the last 3 weeks. So, hey, that's a point for the Colts. That is an impressive bye-week stat. The Colts' official Twitter account didn't post anything all week. For most teams, that would be a bad sign. That would be a sign of just pure laziness, of like, you know what? Everyone's off this week. But I'll be honest, for the Colts, I think that's a good thing. Kind of nice to not have to hear them talk for a few days. Speaking of talking, the ultimate test of whether or not the Colts won the bye week could be found in Zaire Franklin's Twitter account. He didn't post anything either. That's big for the Colts. No drama, no nothing. It was awesome. Okay? So because of that, I like what the Colts did on their bye week. They are hopefully all about their business, right? Getting ready for the Broncos, prepping, doing all that stuff. Meanwhile, the Broncos, their social media account was active over the weekend. They posted a montage of all 47 sacks. That number leads the NFL from the Broncos defense this year. That's impressive. Seriously, it is. The Broncos Twitter account also posted a video of fans tailgating from previous weeks, just reflecting on their favorite Broncos memories, right? Talking about winning Super Bowls and doing all that stuff. Like, that's cool. I think that's worth something. They also posted a puppy. That's worth like 3 touchdowns in the social media world. Look, if you want to grow your Twitter or your Instagram, it's really not that hard. Just throw up photos and videos of your dog. Seriously. And then it's like 1 million followers immediately. Then on Saturday night, as I alluded to earlier, I had to go to a Christmas party. My wife and her 4 college roommates get together for Christmas every year. They're all married now, and so they drag the husbands along with them. It's always interesting whenever we go. I am the only non-Purdue grad that is there, or at least I was this time. One of the other husbands did not go to Purdue. So he and I just kind of stand in the corner. And we're like, geez, Purdue sucks at football this year, huh? But that didn't happen this year. He didn't show up anyway. And so I'm sitting there, I'm just kind of hanging out, kind of doing my own thing as I usually do. Like, I'm just kind of at this point where it's like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I want to do. And if you people would like to join me, then that would be great. But if not, I'm going to have a great time all by myself. So I'm doing my own thing. I'm drinking my carbonated water, eating really good food. And then one of the other husbands there, super nice guy. He's from Denver. Right? Grew up there, is a Broncos, Nuggets, Avalanche fan, like Rockies, all that across the board. He is all Denver sports. And so he sees me walk in. He knows that I do this. And he just wants to talk about the Broncos. That's all that he wanted to talk about. And he knows that I am a Miami Dolphins fan at heart. And so we break away from everyone else because no one else there cares about the Broncos or the Dolphins or the Colts or anything like that. And so we break away and he goes, hey, Jonathan. He asked me this question. He goes, hey, Jonathan, what chances do the Dolphins have at catching the Broncos? And I was just kind of like, not a great one. And then I said, I was like, you should be more concerned, more worried about the Colts. And then he asked me, point blank, he was like, why would I be concerned about the Colts? They aren't very good. Like, why would I even be concerned about Anthony Richardson? Like, his completion percentage is, 50% on the year or whatever it is, and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like trying not to laugh. Because I'm just like, this guy, Broncos fan, once again, not even slightly concerned about the Colts catching them. So it's just like, yeah, like why would I be worried about the Colts? We're gonna beat them on Sunday at home, and it's like it's not even gonna matter anymore. Like, what about Miami? And I'm just like, you shouldn't have to worry about Miami. I'd be worried about the Colts. They're not concerned about the Colts. Like, I mean, it's just it's kind of funny. And so, given I'm doing the whole survey of one thing here, and so I'm going to base the entire Broncos fan base and how they feel based off of this one interaction. Don't you just love it when people do that? I'm going to award the Broncos the W, and the Broncos bye week versus Colts bye week. I'm going to give the W to the Broncos due to the lack of concern about the Colts from Broncos fans. It's like, oh, they aren't going to catch us. We're not even worried about them. Okay, they are riding high, pun intended. Bo Nix is out here having them reflect on Super Bowls. Like, they love that guy. Meanwhile, the Colts still split on Anthony Richardson. I bet that if you polled 3,000 people on the Colts and you were like, would you rather start Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco? That number would still be like 50-50. Somewhere close. Maybe in favor of Richardson because he's put together a couple of game-winning drives these past couple weeks. But I'm sure that there's still plenty of people out there that are like, no, I would rather play Flacco, which is interesting. Okay. And then sure, look, like I said, I'm glad that the Colts were silent. I'm glad that they didn't have any drama. But I won't lie. Like, when I saw the montage of all these Broncos sacks, I was sitting there, I was like, you know what would be really cool? Just like a montage of all of Alec Pierce's deep balls that he's caught this year. Like, that'd be pretty sick. Okay, like it must have been nice for Broncos fans on a week where they didn't get to watch their team play to be like, hey, look at all those sacks. Plus, the Broncos, like, they posted a puppy. Like, that automatically wins the bye week. Okay, they won the bye week. Hopefully, though, the Colts can win the real game on Sunday, which I am very much looking forward to. Seriously, like I love watching the Colts. They have figured some things out clearly. Like offenses don't put together 2 winning drives in 3 weeks if they haven't figured something out. Okay, and I think that something is more of a reliance on Anthony Richardson and his ability to run the ball. I think Anthony Richardson has also just been more consistent. Okay, like he's hitting drags and slants at a higher rate. Not saying that he's perfect, but he's hitting them at a higher rate than he was earlier in the season. And like those things matter. And so you've got this young Colts quarterback kind of in the process of figuring things out. And then for the Broncos, you've got the exact same thing. You've got this young Broncos quarterback who is in the process of figuring things out. Sean Payton helping him along. Shane Steichen helping Anthony Richardson along. And I think we're going to get a very entertaining game on Sunday. And like I haven't even checked the line. If I had to guess, let's guess the line. I would guess that the what do they call it? That the Broncos are favored by 3.5. That is my official guess as my sportsbook loads up on my phone. Because like let's be honest, I think that at this point, Bo Nix for the season as a whole has played and looked better than Anthony Richardson has, throughout the year, which is fine. Bo Nix played a lot more football in college than Anthony Richardson did and all that other kind of stuff. The Broncos are 4.5 point favorites, so I was off by a point. And that feels about right, but if the Colts go in there and win on Sunday, I will not be surprised in the slightest. I can't wait. Can't wait to watch that game, right? Because it feels like the Colts, offensively at least, are just a little bit younger than the Broncos. Shane Steichen's supposed to be this awesome offensive mind. It's his second year as a football coach. Sean Payton's been doing it for a long time. Bo Nix has played a lot of football. Anthony Richardson has not. It's just the game's going to be fascinating, and I can't wait for that game on Sunday. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, my thoughts on the college football playoff rankings. We're going to dive into Notre Dame hosting Indiana in the first round. All that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys had a nice weekend. I did watch a lot of football, hung out with my wife quite a bit, hung out with her friends some as well. Like I said, just a really, really good weekend. College football playoff rankings came out yesterday, and we learned that Indiana will be going on the road to take on Notre Dame, which is perfect. It's the best thing for me. It's the best thing for this show because let's be honest. I root for what is in the best interest of the show. And Indiana going on the road to South Bend on December 20th in the first round of the college football playoff is what's best for this show. I'm so glad that this happened. We get this interstate matchup. Notre Dame is probably laughing at the idea of playing Indiana. Okay, you know, Notre Dame views Indiana as like this little brother that still belongs at the kids' table. Meanwhile, Indiana's like, what do you mean? We smoke cigs now. It's great. We're coming for you, Notre Dame. We're coming for you. And I'm very excited, very intrigued by this matchup because I think these teams are pretty different, right? At least in the way that they're built and all those things. And what I'm hoping happens is that this is just an awesome game. I hope every game is awesome. And you would think that would be the case because there aren't any bad teams left at this point in the year except for SMU and Clemson. Not too sure that either one of them are good. Anyway, Coach Cignetti knows and understands the challenge that Notre Dame is for this Indiana team. Here is Coach Cignetti talking about Notre Dame after learning yesterday that that's who they're going to play in the first round of the college football playoff.
Notre Dame, I'll be honest, saw them on tape against Purdue. We're getting ready for Purdue. Obviously, a very good football team. They've won 10 in a row. Coach Freeman's done a tremendous job with that football team. I've looked at their stats, haven't had a chance to really watch them today with all the media stuff going on. But, you know, I saw enough of them against Purdue to know that they're an excellent football team. And when you look at their scores, they haven't played in very many close games. So I'm sure they'll be quite the challenge. But we're looking forward to it. We're a good football team. I'm confident in our football team. I think that we will apply the lessons learned at Ohio State when we had to go on the road in a hostile environment against a good football team and apply those up at Notre Dame. And we've got to have a great week of prep.
Coach Cignetti right there talking about Indiana's opening playoff game against Notre Dame, having to go on the road to South Bend, play in front of touchdown Jesus. It's going to be great. The atmosphere is going to be rocking. There's going to be a lot of Indiana fans there as well as Notre Dame fans. And this matchup to me is interesting because when you look at these two teams, Notre Dame is undoubtedly more talented than Indiana. Riley Leonard is a better talent than Curtis Rourke. The offensive line at Notre Dame is always one of the best in the country. The secondary is more talented than Indiana's. But Notre Dame is more than capable of not playing well. See their game against Northern Illinois for proof. Indiana, meanwhile, is always well coached. They haven't laid an egg all year. Sure, they lost by 23 on the road against Ohio State, but that was because Ohio State was simply on another level in terms of talent from everyone, not named Georgia, Oregon, and Texas. Okay, those are the four most talented teams in college football. And when you watched Ohio State play Indiana, that is why they beat them, not because of coaching. Okay, Notre Dame is a 7.5-point favorite at home. I haven't bet on it yet. I don't know if I will, but I'd lean toward Indiana losing, but covering that 7.5 points at first glance. You say, well, Jonathan, why? You just said that Notre Dame has better players, and they do, but I think Coach Cignetti is a better coach than Marcus Freeman. I think the quick turnaround at Indiana is proof of that. Also, because Cignetti is a better coach than Marcus Freeman, the 2 weeks to get ready for the game favors Indiana because they play not this Friday, but next. Now, look, I'm not saying that Marcus Freeman's a bad coach by any stretch of the imagination, but He's laid some eggs in 4 years at Notre Dame. Like, he's had some games where he's had the more talented team, and he's gone out and lost. This year, Northern Illinois at home, they lose. Last year, 2022, he lost to Marshall and Stanford, who finished 3-9 that year. That was back in 2022. That was 2 years ago. They didn't have any bad losses last year when you look at Notre Dame and their schedule, but they lost to teams like Louisville. That's a team that Notre Dame should have beaten last year. They lost also to Clemson, who was down last year. That's another team that Notre Dame should have beaten. So Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman is more than capable of losing games that they should not lose. The thing with Notre Dame, though, as I alluded to earlier, is they are simply more talented than Indiana. Notre Dame has more players on their roster that are going to play on Sundays than Indiana does. That's why they're favored. And that's why when you hear the national experts, when you hear them talk about this game, everyone's going to take Notre Dame just because they are simply more talented than Indiana. But Indiana is still very well coached. They still have a good team. They still have some talent. Curtis Rourke probably going to be like a 7th-round pick. The Pons kid, he was a freshman All-American last year. He's going to be here hopefully again next year. So, like, Indiana's got some good players. And Marcus Freeman understands that. Here he is yesterday after learning that they are going to play Indiana at home in the first round of the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, Coach has done a wonderful job to take this program to win 11 games in the Big Ten and in a Big Ten season, and to have this team ready to make a run in the playoffs. I mean, it's a credit to the coach. I didn't know much about him. I took a minute and Googled him and looked at some of the things he's done in the past at his other places. I mean, he's won everywhere he's been. So he's done a great job. And we expect a great opponent. I've just briefly started looking at them. They're a talented team that really takes care of the football, right? They play complementary football. Their defense is a pressure attacking defense that really makes you earn everything you got and you get. And the offense has done a good job of taking care of the football, being consistent at what they do, and done some really good things in the red zone. So that's just my initial look at them. Obviously, we have a few days to really take a deep dive and figure out a plan of attack as we get ready for a Friday game.
Coach Freeman, head coach at Notre Dame right there, talking about their upcoming college football playoff game at home against the Indiana Hoosiers. And once again, this game's going to be awesome. It's just like I am so incredibly excited. I don't think that the College Football Playoff Committee did a very good job. I don't think that the College Football Playoff has been set up in a way for the best teams to have an advantage. But I will give the College Football Playoff Committee some credit right here, setting up this game. Because I'm sure that they very easily could have argued for SMU to be ranked in front of Indiana, since they love it when teams lose by 3 for some reason. I'm sure that they could have made an argument for Notre Dame to be ranked in front of Penn State, because then you got Indiana going to Penn State, but they probably were like, no, we don't want a Big Ten matchup. We want an interstate matchup between Notre Dame and Indiana, because that would be the best thing for ratings. And look, that game is going to rate incredibly well. The entire state of Indiana will be tuned in to that game on Friday night, December 20th. And when it comes to Coach Freeman and the comments that he made, it's very nice to know that he Googled Curt Cignetti. But let's be honest, you don't have to Google Indiana to figure out why they're good. You don't have to Google Indiana to figure out why they're 11-1 and why they've beaten the crap out of teams. Indiana's not that hard to figure out. They simply aren't going to beat themselves. On offense, they're going to run the football when they can. Okay, they're going to run a lot of RPOs. And in terms of trying to push the ball down the field, they're going to throw back shoulder fades to their large wide receivers. That is what's going to happen. Also, they aren't going to turn the ball over. That's just not going to happen. Indiana does not turn the football over. They're not going to commit a whole bunch of penalties. Okay, they will not beat themselves. If you're going to beat Indiana, they are going to make you beat them. That is the reality of it. Okay, Indiana's not going to walk out there, turn the football over 3 times, and walk away like, geez, if we hadn't turned the football over 3 times, we might have had a chance. No, like they are going to play a clean game with few penalties and no turnovers. Okay, and when you do that, when you don't give your opponent free yards, when you don't give your opponent the football, then you have a chance to beat anybody. Plus, they've got some good players. I don't know if they have anyone who's great, but they've got multiple good players that are capable of making plays. I am excited to watch this game. This is going to be a great game. Okay, when I look at the first round of the college football playoff, okay, first off, I see some blowouts happening. Like I see Texas blowing out Clemson at home. I see Penn State blowing out SMU at home. Okay, because once again, the ACC is the worst of the 4 Power 4 conferences. Okay, SMU and Clemson are not good teams. Sorry, they're not. Tennessee and Ohio State, that game's going to be really good, really intriguing. Very, very surprised that Ohio State's favored by 7.5 points in that game. Okay, but I like this Indiana Notre Dame game. I think it will be the best, closest game of all of these first round matchups because Indiana is going to do the things necessary to stay in the game, which is not commit penalties and not turn the ball over. And they play good, solid, sound defense. Their guys are never out of position. Okay. So there you go. Very, very excited to watch this game. When it comes to the college football playoff committee as a whole, the way the bracket shook out is just, it's so frustrating. It's so dumb. Like it is. I hate the way this works. Arizona State's ranked 12th, but they get the bye as a 4 seed. That doesn't make any sense. Boise State's the 9th ranked team in the country, and they got a bye as the 3 seed. That doesn't make any sense either. The top 4 ranked teams should get the 4 byes. Like that's just really simple, like playoff stuff. Okay, because when you do it that way, the paths make sense. Like the number 1 seed should have the easiest path when you do it that way. Okay, but when you don't, you wind up with what we have this year. Oregon beat Penn State, but because of how the seeding played out, Penn State has an easier path to the semifinal game than Oregon does. That doesn't make sense. Penn State lost to Oregon and was rewarded for it. That doesn't make any sort of sense. Penn State is going to host a home game in the first round and play the 10th ranked team in the country in SMU. And then after they crush SMU, they're favored by 9. SMU's not very good. They will then play the 9th ranked team, Boise State, who they will likely crush because there's a major gap between major Division I college football and real and a great group of 5 team. There's a huge gap. I get it. Ashton Jainty's awesome. Penn State will beat the dog out of both SMU and Boise State. Meanwhile, you look at Oregon. And sure, they get a bye week. That's great. But they have to play bye week, and then they get either 6th ranked Ohio State or 7th ranked Tennessee. Penn State is going to play the lesser ranked team in the second round. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And then, by the way, Oregon, after they probably beat, Tennessee or Ohio State, they then have to play 3rd ranked Texas. Good luck. Jeez. If you're the number 1 overall seed, like you should have the easiest path to the playoff. Okay? Like it is. There's no way around it. Okay? Meanwhile, Oregon, the number 1 seed, has one of the harder paths. And that needs to be fixed immediately, like starting next year. Either reseed the teams after the first round or just give bye weeks to the top 4 ranked teams. Okay? If you win your conference, you should automatically be in the playoff. That's fine. That makes sense to me. But the top 4 ranked conference champions should not be getting bye weeks. That doesn't make sense because then it gives you a lopsided bracket like we have this year. And when you have a playoff, the goal is to find the 2 best teams. That is the goal. And just with how lopsided this is, I'm not convinced that that's going to happen this year. I'm just not, because teams like Penn State, the 6th seed, has such an easier path than a team like Oregon. So we'll see how it goes. Now, when we come back here in about 4 minutes, Curt Cignetti said some things that bothered me. College football playoff committee made some decisions that bothered me. I'm going to get into those things when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Christmas right around the corner. Hopefully you grabbed some presents, did something, I don't know, did something productive. Oh, wait, I went to the gym. So I'll be honest, I've gotten fat. Not fat. That's probably a bit harsh, but I've put on the weight. It's not good. So my goal starting, I don't even know when I started this, was to go to the gym every day up until I leave to go to my parents' house for Christmas. And so far I've done that. Got to get back in there today. Hit legs pretty good yesterday. Got a big push day today. Can't wait. Love push day. It's the best day of the week when it comes to going to the gym. I really enjoy it. Something, though, that I don't enjoy is college football coaches complaining about their seating or about the college football playoff because, like, you're clearly biased. I have no interest whatsoever in what you're going to say. Even if you make a good point, I'm going to ignore it because you're clearly biased. And Coach Cignetti did this exact thing on Saturday night. He went on national TV. He went on CBS. He went on the pregame show before Oregon played Penn State, and he sat up there and he whined and he complained about not hosting a home college football playoff game. Here he is complaining about the college football playoff.
Ninth in the CFP. Yeah, here's my question, right? There's 6 one-loss teams in the country, right? Okay. We lost to the second-ranked team on the road. Penn State lost to the 4th-ranked team at home. Texas lost to the 5th-ranked team at home. Boise lost to the 7th-ranked team. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. And SMU lost to an unranked team at the time they played. So how are we not right now seeded for a home game? That's what I want to know. We got the largest margin of victory in the country. Okay, take out the FCS and the G5, right? P4 only. We're outscoring people 40-17. Second in the country. So because our name is Indiana and not Michigan,
pretty much,
we're ninth.
That's one of those things.
Coach Cignetti complaining right there about how they weren't seeded to host a home college football playoff game. I can't. Come on, Coach. Look, every coach does this, right? We've heard Lane Kiffin barking and explaining why Ole Miss should be in the playoff ever since they lost their 3rd game. Okay, we've heard Kirby Smart complain about it, right? He even did it after they won the SEC championship game. Like, Greg Sankey gave us this horrible schedule and all that kind of stuff. Like, every coach does this, and it's incredibly annoying. All of the teams in front of you when it comes to Indiana, Coach Cignetti, I know you're listening. I'm talking to you. Every team ranked in front of you has better wins than you do. Tennessee, who's 11-1, and is ranked in front of you and is still going to go on the road. Guess what? They beat Alabama. That win over Alabama is better than your win against Michigan. I'm sorry, but it's true. Ohio State beat you and Penn State on the road. Okay? I mean, sorry, but that is a better win than beating Michigan. Notre Dame, look, yes, they lost to Northern Illinois. I've talked about that loss more than anyone else in the country. But they went on the road and beat Texas A&M. That is more impressive than beating 7-5 Michigan at home. Penn State, they beat Illinois. That's their best win. They played a tougher schedule than you did. That's why they were selected for the Big Ten title game, and you weren't. They sat back, and the tiebreaker that they got to was, okay, what is your in-conference opponent's record? What is their winning percentage? Penn State was higher. They played a tougher conference schedule than you did. That's why they're ranked in front of you. Texas, they beat Texas A&M on the road. That is more impressive than your win against Michigan. Every single team, every last one of them that is ranked in front of Indiana has a more impressive win than Indiana does. Look, we've talked a lot about scheduling this year. And for Indiana, how much of a blessing it was that they didn't have to play Penn State and they didn't have to play Oregon, right? But this is the downside of it, okay? Because when 9 games are laid out for you and the Big Ten only gives you one opportunity to show how good of a team you are, because in 7 of your 9 conference games, you played the bottom half of the Big Ten, this is the drawback. This is the downside of it. you don't have opportunities to show how good you are. That's why you shouldn't have canceled the Louisville game and played Western Illinois instead, like you did this year. Okay, that is why you're going on the road for the first round of the college football playoff. If you wanted a home game, then you should have either beat Ohio State or you should have lost on a last-second field goal, because that's something that actually gets you into the college football playoff if you're SMU. Or you could have played Louisville, who would have been another good win on your resume. But no, instead, you opted out of that game and you decided to play Western Illinois instead, which I'm sorry, even though you beat them 77-3, it's not going to move the voters. Okay, that is why you're going on the road in the first round. Okay, you didn't play a tough enough schedule. You didn't have enough opportunities to beat good teams. Okay, so sorry, I get it. You're 11-1. That's awesome. You're clearly a good team, and clearly the College Football Playoff Committee values winning games. Okay, right? By putting SMU in over Alabama, the College Football Playoff Committee communicated that all wins and losses are weighed the same. But when you have the same record as every other one-loss team, something has to separate you so that they can rank you properly. And thankfully, the College Football Playoff Committee looked at who is your best win. And Indiana's against 7-5 Michigan is not as good as every other team ranked in front of them that is hosting a home playoff game. Simple as that. Now, speaking of SMU and Alabama, last thing here on the college football playoff, and then I'll shut up about it. Alabama should have gotten in over SMU. I get why they didn't. Losing to Vanderbilt, losing to Oklahoma, on the road, both of them. Like, those losses need to matter. They do. But so does beating Georgia. So does beating South Carolina. So does beating Missouri. And so does beating LSU. Like, your best wins have to matter. Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, and LSU would all be SMU's best win. That should matter. The fact that SMU hasn't beaten a ranked team all year, even though they had 2 chances to do it, should matter. SMU went 11-2 on the year. They lost to 16th ranked Clemson by 3. And they lost to 17th ranked BYU by 3. That means they're probably somewhere around the 18th best team in college football. That's what those losses communicate to me. The idea, and here's, been the argument for SMU, well, if you keep them out of the playoff, then teams will not play conference title games anymore, which is just not true. The idea that removing SMU from the college football playoff after losing to Clemson in the ACC championship game would have resulted in the ACC removing their conference title game is wrong. It's just wrong. That is not what would have happened. Because by having the conference championship game, the ACC had the chance to put 2 teams in. Whereas if you don't have it, you're locked into only having 1. That is the reality of it. Okay? In addition to that, what is college football all about? It's about money. And the ACC, for their TV deal, because let's be honest, the ACC doesn't have the most lucrative college football teams in the country. I'm sorry. I just don't think that ESPN or Fox or whoever or CBS is going to pay as much money for teams like Wake Forest and SMU and Clemson as they will for Alabama, Georgia, Texas, A&M. Just roll down the list. And so having that ACC title game with an automatic playoff bid on the line, like, that is something that these TV programs want and will pay more money for. So I'm sorry. I just don't think that the ACC is just going to cut a game based off of one result, especially when one of the other outcomes would have been what we actually got, an opportunity to put 2 teams in. Okay. My real argument here for Alabama is I think that when you're voting on teams and you're trying to put teams in the college football playoff, there should be a required question asked of every team. Can you picture them winning the whole thing? Can you picture them winning the whole thing? Can you picture SMU winning the whole thing? The answer to that question is no. But if you want to be nice, then you could say, I don't know. Because let's be honest, we haven't seen them beat anybody that's ranked. Okay? The most impressive thing that we've seen SMU do is beat 8-4 Louisville and beat 8-4 Duke. Okay? That is what they have proven. SMU has proven that they can beat teams that are 8-4. Guess what doesn't have any 8-4 teams in it? The college football playoff. Okay? Then you ask the same question about Alabama. Can you picture them winning the whole thing? And the answer to that question has to be yes. Because we saw them beat Georgia and we saw them beat South Carolina, two of the 15 best teams in the country. Sure, we also saw them lose at Oklahoma. We also saw them lose at Vanderbilt. That's fine. But guess what isn't in the college football playoff? 6-6 teams. They aren't there. Okay? They're not. Strength of schedule and strength of record should outweigh winning the weakest of the 4 Power 4 conferences, or going undefeated at least, and the weakest of the 4 Power 4 conferences, then losing to 16th ranked Clemson in the ACC title game. Look, let's just be perfectly honest about this year. There is no good option between SMU and Alabama. That's why this whole 12-team playoff thing never made any sense. Because once you get to Team 12, no one is really deserving of making it. Like the idea that Alabama doesn't deserve to get in because they lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma is totally valid. But also the idea that SMU doesn't belong in because they haven't beaten anybody ranked, that idea also totally valid. Okay? And so when you're picking between these two things, I just feel like the committee should have picked the team that had proven on multiple occasions that they can beat some of the best teams in the country over the team that had 2 chances to prove the exact same thing, but couldn't win those games. They couldn't beat BYU. They couldn't beat Clemson. Okay? I'm sorry, but that SMU team proved that by losing those games that they can't beat the best teams in the country. The college football playoff is built of the best teams in the country. And if I'm going to put someone in, it needs to be a team that is actually capable or has shown that they are capable of actually winning those games. SMU has not done that. Alabama has, and that's why they should have been put in over SMU. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Purdue hired a new head coach for their college football team. And I won't lie, I'm kind of jealous. My thoughts on Purdue hiring Barry Odom when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Oh, I did. I had a good time hanging out with friends, hanging out with my wife, doing all that awesome stuff. It was great. I had an absolute blast. And Purdue fans, they got some big news over the weekend. They officially hired Barry Odom, former UNLV head coach, to be their new head football coach. And for the first time in my life, I am legitimately jealous of Purdue because they hired a fantastic football coach. Barry Odom can flat out coach. There's no way around it. I mean, when you look at, his resume, it's not like he's won national titles or anything, but everywhere he's been, he's figured out a way to win. And I know this because I grew up in Arkansas / Tennessee, the South, but my entire family is from Arkansas. So I'm a huge Arkansas Razorback fan. And Barry Odom, 2 years ago, was the defensive coordinator at Arkansas. And he was there for a few years before he took the head coaching job at UNLV. Before he was at Arkansas, he was the head coach at Missouri. And Missouri won games under Barry Odom. And I was hoping that this offseason, Arkansas would fire their current head coach, Sam Pittman, and hire Barry Odom to be their head coach. And Arkansas was like, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. Instead, we are going to keep Sam Pittman, who has the losing record over 5 years, and we're going to allow Barry Odom to go coach at Purdue, because that is what ended up happening. I really like Barry Odom. Okay. Now, it's a good hire, but if he brings his offensive coordinator, Marion, along with him, it's great. They run this weird 2 running back, fast paced, run the football, tough, physical system. And that's something that you have to be physical if you want to win in the Big Ten. So bringing him along would be very helpful for Barry Odom and Purdue in this new era. Now at Missouri, as I think it was Heath Har, commented, Barry Odom went 25-25 at Missouri, but what we have to remember is that when he showed up, Missouri was terrible. Missouri was awful when he showed up. And in 4 years, he was able to put together 2 8-win seasons. Nothing wrong with that. Purdue fans, let me ask you, because I'll be honest, I am not very well acclimated to the expectations in the football world at Purdue. But if Barry Odom showed up and he won 8 games every year, and then once every 4 years they upset, one of the major Big Ten teams like, Penn State or Indiana, or can't believe I just threw Indiana in there on that, or Ohio State or Michigan, I'm going to assume that you would be happy as a Purdue fan. Solid 8-4 every year from time to time. You go 9-3. Maybe you catch a break and you get a schedule similar to what Indiana did. You go 11-1 and you make the playoff. I think Purdue fans, given what I know about the football program, would be overjoyed by that. Okay, and Barry Odom's a guy who is more than capable of coming in and doing that, going 8-4 every year, and then from time to time, having this kind of outlier season where he goes 10-2 or 11-1 and potentially sneaks into the college football playoff. When you look at his time at UNLV, his most recent stop, his first year he shows up and they won 9 games. It's pretty good. And then this year they won 10. When you look at the history, at least the recent history of UNLV, since 2010, UNLV had 3 seasons of 5 wins or more. And then Barry Odom shows up and is like, nah, we're going to win 9 in year 1 and we're going to win 10 in year 2. This guy can coach. And one of the more impressive things that we saw him do this year, Barry Odom, was this whole NIL debacle that happened. Okay, if you don't remember, UNLV, they get off to this really hot start. People are like, oh, they could make the college football playoff as the group of 5 team. And there's, some excitement around that, right? And then, the starting quarterback, UNLV, walks into Barry Odom's office and is like, hey, man, I want my money. And Barry Odom was like, what are you talking about? And the quarterback was like, well, you guys owe me $100,000. Do you not remember telling me that you were going to pay me that? And then he was like, no, sorry, bro. I do not. And then all sorts of stuff happened. They, didn't get it in writing. UNLV saying that they never promised that. UNLV saying that they pay their players, and then obviously the quarterback is like, no, you don't. But it didn't matter. Barry Odom was able to keep that locker room together. Like, it didn't throw their season off. And that is something that I feel like could completely and totally derail your season. And it did not happen to this UNLV team. Okay, Purdue hired a good coach, and I think that he's going to turn things around rather quickly for two reasons. First and foremost, as I've said a million times in this segment, he is a good coach. Second reason is the schedule next year. Way easier than it was this year. Next year, they're going to play Ball State and Southern Illinois. Those are two games that they should win, no doubt. And guess what? If they win both of those games, that's more wins than they had this year. Then they have to play at Notre Dame, which is going to be brutal. They will not win that game. They host Indiana after having to play at Indiana this year. They host Illinois after having to go to Illinois, a game in which they lost 50-49 in overtime. And then they host Ohio State, which is way better than having to go play at Ohio State. They don't play Oregon or Penn State like they did this year. Next year, they get to play Northwestern. That's a winnable game. They get to play Minnesota. That's a winnable game. And they get to play Rutgers. That's a winnable game. If they win all three of those and they beat Ball State and Southern Illinois like they should, that's 5 wins right there. Okay, now a new game added on that will be tough is having to play at Michigan next year. And look, Michigan will be good. I think people are going to think they're going to be awesome because they've got this, freshman quarterback coming in who they're paying way too much money. But here's the thing. He's a true freshman. We don't really know if he's going to be good or not yet. And if he ends up not being as good as everyone thinks, then that could be a winnable game. Purdue also plays USC at home, who's not in a great spot as a program right now. And then they play at Washington, another team that is still rebuilding. That schedule is so much easier than the schedule that Purdue had this year. So because of that, Coach Odom is going to have an opportunity to get things off to a good start in his first season at Purdue. Okay? Like he has an opportunity to show up and go 6-6 the year after they went 1-11. I think Purdue fans would be quite pleased with that. I think the ceiling, the most games that I can see Purdue winning next year, this is obviously before transfer portal stuff happens and all that, but I could see them winning 8 games at most next year just because this schedule isn't as tough as it was this year. Now, are they going to win 8 games? Probably not. It'll probably be closer to 6. But making a bowl after going 1-11 the year prior is nothing to be upset about. I don't know what you did yesterday, but I watched a lot of football. I took a nap, which I haven't taken a Sunday nap all football season, and it was an absolute blast. Just an absolute blast. And, the Bills and the Rams game was awesome, and the Sunday night game last night ended exactly how everyone, I think, thought that it would. Kansas City finding a weird way to win. But, throughout the games, I was sitting there, I was like, who's winning the bye week right now between the Colts and the Broncos? Because they're both on a bye week. And so I went to social media to figure out who's winning this bye week. And let's start with the Colts. Colts Twitter was silent. Didn't hear much. Okay, Zach Hicks posted some PFF numbers that, rookie 3rd-round pick Matt Gonsalves, an offensive tackle out of Pitt. He's, apparently the 14th highest rated pass blocker at offensive tackle in the NFL the last 3 weeks. Like that's pretty good. Only allowed 4 hurries and 96 pass blocking snaps. That's good for a rookie. Playing offensive tackle in the NFL is hard. Okay. So that was good. I think that's worth something. The Colts official Twitter account didn't post anything all weekend. I think for most teams that's bad, but for the Colts, that's a great thing. Nice to hear nothing from them for a change, which was really, really nice. Zaire Franklin, if you really want to measure whether or not the Colts won the bye week from a silent standpoint, you have to look at Zaire Franklin. Did he say anything incredibly stupid? He didn't. In fact, he didn't tweet anything, which is nice. Okay, that's big for the Colts. No drama happened. Okay, I'm cool with that. Like, that's a big deal for the Colts because it feels like there's always some sort of drama going on. Okay, so that's big for the Colts. Nothing dumb was said. Okay, then you look at the Broncos, and I won't lie, the Broncos' social media account put up some pretty big numbers. They did. I was impressed. I'm scrolling through, and I see this Broncos post where they put together this montage of their league leading 47 sacks on the year from that Broncos defense. And I'm sitting there, and so I just sat there for like 2 minutes, and I watched all 47 of these sacks, and I was like, that is impressive. They also posted this other video of fans reflecting on their favorite memories as a Broncos fan. And they were talking about like Super Bowls. And I was like, geez, like that sounds nice. I wish they would talk about Super Bowls in Indy. Like even if it's the fans, but we don't really get that. So I think that's worth something. But I think the thing that's going to put them over the top, at least in the social media portion of this, is that they posted a puppy. That's worth like 3 touchdowns in the world of social media. Like that's a really impressive post. Look, I'm not like a social media marketer or like a social media manager, but if you want to grow your social media account, just start posting dogs and you'll do fine. Then on Saturday night, I had to go to a Christmas party. So my wife and her 4 roommates from college, they get together for Christmas every year, and they all drag their husbands along with them. It's a little awkward for me because I'm the only one there who like didn't go to Purdue. They all, husbands and wives, have known each other a lot longer than I have known them. And so I'm just kind of at this point, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do what I want. And if people want to join me, then great. If not, I will have a great time doing what I want by myself. So I'm hanging out, just kind of doing my own thing. And one of the husbands there is from Denver, like born and raised in Denver, is a, Denver guy across the board. So like Broncos, Nuggets, Avalanche, Rockies, so on and so forth. And so like we split off for a second, and he was like, Jonathan, I just want to talk about football. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, let's talk about football. What's up? And he looks at me and he starts talking about the Broncos. He's asking me my thoughts on Bo Nix and all this kind of stuff. And what I noticed very quickly is he wasn't concerned about the Colts at all. He asked me point blank, should the Broncos be worried about the Dolphins catching them for the final wild card spot? For those of you who don't know, I am a Miami Dolphins fan at heart. And like I said, like dude wasn't even concerned about the Colts. Like I brought them up. I was like, I thought you'd be asking me if you should be concerned about the Colts. And he just like laughed. He's like, why would I be concerned about the Colts catching us for a wild card spot? They aren't very good. He didn't say that, but that's kind of the message that was conveyed. He was more worried about the Dolphins, who need a ton of help to make the playoffs, than he was about the Colts. And look, let's just be honest right now. Broncos fans are riding high, pun intended. Okay. Bo Nix has their fans, Broncos fans, remembering when they won Super Bowls and just how happy that made them. And Sean Payton has got them just like overjoyed with the production that they've gotten from this young quarterback. Like that is a united fan base. Meanwhile, Colts fans at least, are still pretty split on the Anthony Richardson stuff. Okay, sure, the Colts were silent this week. They didn't have any drama. But I won't lie to you, like, it would have been cool to see like a montage of deep balls caught by Alec Pierce. Like, it was nice for Broncos fans to see all their sacks this year. Okay, but I don't know. I have to give the nod to the Broncos. Like, I feel like they beat the Colts this bye week. Just from like the social media game was better. I'm going to do the whole polling of one thing. Since the one Broncos fan I know isn't worried about the Colts, I'm just going to assume that none of the other Broncos fans are worried about the Colts, which is kind of deflating, but that's fine. Like, let them sleep on us. That's fine. Let them sleep on the Colts, because this Colts team has gotten better. Anthony Richardson's been better ever since they sat him out for 2 weeks. Look, you lead 2 game-winning drives in a 3-week span. Like, that should inspire confidence in people. So I am very excited about this Colts and Broncos game coming up on Sunday. The Broncos are 4.5-point favorites in that game. I can tell you right now, I would take the Colts in a heartbeat, because they just find a way to stay in every game that they play in. They just do. The defense bends a lot. They give up a ton of yards, but they keep teams out of the end zone for the most part. They've done a decent job at forcing turnovers and doing those sorts of things. Look, this Broncos defense is really, really good. It's one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. I mean, they get after the passer better than anyone, right? They lead the NFL in sacks. But Anthony Richardson's athleticism allows him to avoid sacks better than just about any other quarterback in the NFL. So that's going to be a very interesting kind of clashing of styles. And look, like it makes sense to take the Broncos. Like the fact that the Colts have won any game this year is kind of surprising. Like they're just a really weird bunch, but they're hopefully going to come back healthy. Josh Downs is hopefully going to play on Sunday. Michael Pittman Jr. has been dealing with a back and a shoulder. Hopefully this week off is going to help him be healthy. The Colts have been missing multiple offensive linemen, what feels like every week for the past month. Hopefully they're going to be healthy. Hopefully Ryan Kelly is back playing center. Hopefully, Bernard Raymond's back at left tackle. I know he played 2 weeks ago. Hopefully Braden Smith's back at right tackle. He missed the game. Hopefully Quentin Nelson, I'm sure he's banged up. He's the only offensive lineman who's played every game this year. Hopefully he's back and like a little closer to 100% than what he was, against the Lions where he got bulldozed. So I am very intrigued at what's going to happen in this game. It's a big one for the Colts. As we all know, if they win this, then they've got a real good shot at making the playoffs, because that Broncos schedule down the stretch is tough. Chargers, Chiefs. That's two really tough games that they're going to have to win. And so I can't wait. Very excited for that game. But like I said, it was a good weekend. Hopefully you enjoyed yours. The Dan Daka Show is coming your way starting at noon. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune in to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Head over to Twitter. Follow me there at _ Jonathan Smith. Follow the station there as well at Ticket 1430 for all the updates on my show and Dan's show. And make sure you tune in tomorrow. I'm on again from 10 to noon. Hopefully going to have Zach Hicks on once again to kind of look forward to that game against the Broncos. The Dan Daka Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes, where he's going to have a lot of thoughts on Indiana, Purdue's head coach, and a lot more. The Dan Daka Show comes your way here in 5 minutes.